Perfect.
I think, yeah, I think that worked.
You did it
Okay,
perfectly.
thank you.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and your willingness to come and, talk about this.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's important to talk about things like this.
Yes, it is. I know a lot of the people that watch this will identify with your struggle because we all love our kids all the way down to their toenails, and we just want them to be okay.
Yeah, he is the most important thing in my life, and
Yep.
keeping him healthy is extremely important to me. And I don't know if he may recognize the importance of what's going on, but I'm not sure he understands how to coordinate it. And the more I try to help him, the more he kind of pushes me out of it.
Ah, yes. Yes,
Yeah.
because as a young adult, he's trying to deal with things his way, and that's absolutely what we want them to do. So,
Yes, he does not want to be seen as a child. He wants to be seen as a capable adult.
yes. And, he has all kinds of evidence that he is capable. I mean, he has
Yeah.
done a lot of really amazing things. He's gotten through all the coursework that he had to do in order to qualify for this internship. I mean, that is impressive.
Yes. And over the weekend, he had a really nice social weekend with some of the other students, going whitewater rafting and just having a lot of fun.
And I
But
love that this is an outdoor thing because it seems
mhm.
like our kids really thrive there. A lot of our kids do. Some don't.
Yeah.
My daughter doesn't like it when it's too hot. So if the temperature's good, she's good. But it's fun
Yeah,
that
that's the same with my son. He gets overheated really easily.
yes, did. I'll never forget the very first, soccer thing I signed her up for, and she said, "I'm not going back. I was too hot."
Ah, that's a shame.
So
Sometimes I wonder if there's a metabolic disorder going on with autism. There's so much they don't really know yet.
we are clueless in a lot of ways with anything that has to do with the brain. I think we've
Yeah.
done really good. We've made really good progress with the heart, but the brain, I think we're just beginning to explore and start to understand. We've just developed some of the technology that makes it possible for us to understand better what's going on in there. So with better technology,
Mhm.
it gives us more data, gives us, more to work with. So I think
That's right. Yeah.
I think it's
So
fast.
many longitudinal studies need to be done. And also, I was just reading an article about comorbid physical conditions with autism, and the cardiovascular system is one that they're really concerned about.
Hmm. Well, and I think that my background when I was in high school, so we're talking about 5 decades ago, I did an
Same here.
experiment with another person in my biology class, and his father was actually doing primary research on the impact of anxiety and stress on the heart. And so
Yes.
he was arguing that it's the anxiety and the stress that can cause more damage than the diet. And he was
Well,
using,
this is my primary concern with my son. His stress level is so high and he pushes himself so hard. He's very perfectionistic and he has no off switch when it comes to his anxiety. He can't
yeah,
relax. Even as a small baby, he squirmed. He couldn't settle. And this has been his MO throughout life.
yep. I think it's a marker. They don't say it. They talk about the social, the sensory, and the cognitive. And I guess I would, differences, and I would hook it onto that cognitive piece. I would put the anxiety on that cognitive piece, but they don't identify it anywhere in the DSM as a marker. And I have met parents who claim that they're, who describe their children as not being anxious, but they tend to have the lower they tend to have the third that has the lower intelligence, the third of
And
autistic
it
people.
also could be that they're not being stressed, and that's why they're not
They may not
anxious.
push themselves. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Because when my son was little, when he was perseverating on a topic or something, he seemed perfectly relaxed. But
Yeah.
when he was exposed to the outside world and someone wanted him to do his homework, for instance, that was major stress.
Maybe.
And it's that way in college now too, because he has all these things he's expected to do.
Yeah. And
And
that's
he's taking speech. That's hard for him.
he has to present in front of a group
He
of
has to present a speech every couple of weeks, and that's really hard.
I bet he gets quite worried about it.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see if I like to go through. I don't know if you're familiar with the book that I really like that I just gave away. So I don't have my copy of it. I have the digital copy of it called Seeing Autism by Barb Avila. She has worked with autistic people for over 30 years. And she wrote, I think, just it's the brilliant book in that she speaks to us as if we were her best friends. You know?
Mhm.
And she advocates, and I highly recommend it, for even parents of older children, even though she does talk about the developmental process too. And she talks about what you were just saying is that this anxiety that our children experience as young people and as infants even is affects their ability to learn some of the skills that are picked up along the way by others who don't have an
Yes.
autistic brain or an anxious brain. And so that's what gives them this cascading effect of not having the skills that others that don't have autistic brains that are their age might have picked up along the way, and I think she does a
Makes sense.
great job. And so she argues that we should follow this process where we first understand what's going on, what could be different, and then connect with them and then figure out what the practice is. So that's what we're going to do today. And I want to suggest to you that the reason why our kids are often very anxious is because they're in the motivational triad. This is what our brain does on default. It goes and it tries to stay safe. It tries to avoid pain. It tries to seek pleasure, and it tries to conserve energy. And as you were just saying, what happens though is these get, intensified whenever they're in a situation where their skills are not they have a lagging skill that isn't meeting this unsolved problem.
Right, and I think I'd like to add something too. Some article I read a long time ago mentioned that their fight or flight response is
Yes.
very, very strong, and that's my son. I mean, he's just he's either running towards something or running away from it, it
Yes.
seems.
My
He's never
daughter,
content to just be there, you know?
no, and for my Mother's Day present, my daughter gave me this book. Let's see if I can get it in the screen.
Oh,
Unmasking
yeah.
Autism by Devin Price, and he just wrote this book, so it was just published in 2022. I'm going to see if I can talk him into coming onto the Art of Adulting, where I can interview him and tell you all, share him in this book with all of our people, because he was talking exactly about that, and I'm just in the first chapter. That our kids
That
just
sounds very good. I think I have to read that.
yeah,
Yeah. Unmasking Autism is what it's called?
unmasking autism, and it's
Okay, I'm writing that down.
there you go, and it's by Devin Price.
Devin Price.
Yeah, yeah. Who
Thank you.
I learned about him at the Executive Functioning Online Conference last year, online summit. So you'll see me promote that in August, because I just think that it's the one thing I promote. I don't do anything else because we are all already overloaded. We don't need more. So I do
Yes.
more. And I just think that he's a psychologist who learned later in life that he was autistic.
Mhm. As many people do, yeah.
People do, yes. And my daughter was diagnosed in her early 30s. So yeah, and it's
Really?
yeah, yeah.
My goodness, and you must have suspected long before that.
Well, we didn't know because um, as Devin explains, they often get other diagnoses. She was given borderline personality disorder, and that's not what it was.
That's a shame.
But the good thing is that, where is it? Yeah, she did get the right treatment just by she went to DBT skills training, and exactly what she needed. And this is a book also written by an autistic person who took it and just took all the concepts in DBT and presented it in a way that she felt was so much more friendly for the autistic person.
Now you opened it to self-soothing at first. That sounds
Yeah.
like something that everybody needs. Yeah.
I
have to ask you a question. Is your daughter, how accepting is she of the diagnosis? It sounds like she's pretty accepting.
so thankful. And the therapist that both of my daughters go to, I think is neurodivergent himself. And so he has a lot of practice with neurodivergent people and autism in particular. And it was such a relief for her to have that diagnosis. She and her husband, whom I believe is also autistic, they're just perfect together. So they're both discovering this together. I don't know how we got so lucky. It's just wonderful. So
That is wonderful, because I have to tell you, my son is completely, he doesn't even want to hear the word autism. He hates that diagnosis.
I know, and that's why I named my course, Coaching and Community, The Art of Adulting, and I didn't put the word autism in there.
Well, how do I talk to him about it? Because every time I mention the word, he just shuts me down completely. He will admit to having ADHD, but not autistic spectrum disorder.
Yes. And I had the same challenge for a very long time with my now 29-year-old son. He would describe himself as ADHD, and he says, "Nope, Mom, it's not the autism that affects me; it's the ADHD."
Well, that's what my son says. Yeah, it's my attention is terrible, and my memory is lousy, and but he
won't
doesn't see the
embrace the autism, and that's fine, because it's not. We don't need them to embrace the label. We need to embrace. We need to embrace how they think together.
Yeah.
And we just talk about how human it is. And this is what the next concept I just wanted to introduce was the idea that what he's going to have to do, and what my kids have to do, is they have to then deny false pleasures, right? I'll make this a little bit bigger. Where do I click? There it is. Deny false pleasures, expend energy, and invite discomfort, which puts them right on the edge, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. That's funny. My son just said last night, "I'm no good at delayed gratification."
Yes. Yes. They can see. So we talk about these concepts and leave the labels for whenever they're ready. They might not. I believe this approach really works best for our kids, and I frankly believe it works well for anybody that's facing, a mental challenge. I mean, the bottom line is they are mentally healthy.
Yeah.
All we are trying to do is help them, like if neutral point is here. They're not sick. Maybe this arm's better. They're not sick. They're not on the wrong. They're fine. What we're just trying to do when we talk about these various strategies and techniques is move them more toward flourishing.
Yes.
So that's all. I don't want them to, if they don't want to, that's fine. Whatever their thoughts are fine, as long as they're aware that it's their thinking that's creating it. And that's what we do.
My only concern for my son is trying to find some method that enables him to relax and stop stressing, because it has affected his cardiovascular system by now. And it's a very big concern. His calcium artery score was higher than mine, and I'm 69 years old. So
okay. And that's an indicator of things that could cause blockages, which could cause
Yeah.
injury to the heart. So we
Right,
definitely
and his
want
dad's
to,
family has, peripheral artery disease throughout the family. I mean, it's just all over the place, and
yep,
his father's had a heart attack and bypass surgery and, um, 5 strokes, and he's 65, so,
5
yeah,
strokes already.
5
Wow.
strokes. 1 major one for,
Yeah,
TIAs, I guess.
TIAs?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yep, yep.
so I
So,
don't want that to happen to my son. Ugh,
well, here's what I think is the most important thing for us to teach them, and that is what I call the steer map. And I know you downloaded the copy of it. So, what it does is it just gives us the opportunity to take what's happening in our lives and separate it into these 5 categories. What's the situation? And that's the part that's outside of our control, the situation.
mhm,
Then what are our thoughts, which flavor our emotions, which cause our, which generate our actions and cause our results? This is all within our control. And
yeah,
it's fascinating to both use it as a tool for them and for ourselves. This is the tool that finally got me. It's just how I finally figured out how to manage what was going on and to manage my own mind so that my kids didn't pick up on, as they do, what's going on in my heart all the time.
yeah.
I needed to be the calm in the middle of the tornado. I need to be a safe place for them. I need to
Mhm,
be, um, you know, on their side and they never have to worry about it. Right? So
yeah,
I have to manage myself first. And I just listened to my one of my coaches, Jody Moore, interview Dr. Jenkins, who wrote this, and I want you to just, this is so cool. All right. So the situation's out of our control. How we interpret what's going on is not. And that's, the what it is neutral, if you will, and our thoughts can interpret it as better or worse. And what happens is our brain is continuously evaluating what's happening. We can't stop it from doing that. It's always comparing what is to something, what we would like it to be, or what we're glad it's not, or it's always doing that. It's made that way, right?
mhm, yeah,
So what we do is when we compare it to something worse or something better, we get depressed. Like, I mean, look at my peers. They don't seem to have these problems. Or, uh, you know, I I really don't like this. I take longer than my peers do to finish tasks, especially ones that involve the prefrontal cortex, the thinking, the planning, the solving problems, the studying, all that. I don't like that, right? So I'm worse off. And the minute we think we're worse off, that creates depression
yeah,
and anxiety, right?
mhm,
Instead, if we decided it was better, like, well, I'm better than I was when I was 10, right? When I was 10, I was not as good at this as I am now. That makes you feel grateful.
yeah, mhm.
So isn't that fascinating? Just by switching our thinking, we can feel better or worse.
Yeah, I hope I can get my son to listen to some of that because he catastrophizes, everything's
Yes,
awful. Everything's constantly
everything.
being compared against what it should be.
Right.
Um, and that's what gets him into depression and anxiety.
All of us, we all do this. We all
Yes, he is a champion at it though,
yes,
and
yes,
it's causing him a huge amount of stress. And
yes,
I feel like as many times as I try to say, yes, but look at how well you're doing and how
right.
successful you are, it's just never enough.
No. And that's why we have to switch our role from being the parent to being the coach. because a coach
What
is
do I tell him, practically speaking?
you stop telling him, "Yeah, I know. It's hard. It's like I have to zip my lip twice." I learned this when I my son was doing some suicide ideation and he was saying that the therapist wasn't helping him. And I figured out that I had to do something. So we started walking every 3 or 4 to 5 days a week after at the end of the day. And I would watch his reaction when I would make a suggestion and it would just shut him down.
Mhm.
When I gave him advice that he didn't want to hear, it would just shut him down. When I
Right.
criticized what he did, it just shut him down. So I stopped sacking him, suggesting, advising, and criticizing. And I started just listening.
Mhm.
Oh my God, what a difference.
Hmm.
Could talk for the entire 30-minute walk because I think also we were side by side, right? And he was in movement. Something about
Yeah.
it outside. I think those three things really helped him open up. And they helped teach me what I needed to do to help coach him. And that was really we really don't want to hear other people's advice unless we've given them permission to give it to us.
Yeah.
So it's not like he didn't get my advice, but I would always preface it by saying, "Are you interested in hearing what my thoughts are? You know, would you
Uh-huh.
be open to that?" And our relationship, I believe, not only went from not only got better, but it also went deeper. It was like he was more willing to share what was really going on. And so I got to know him better. And as we did this, I also shared with him my struggles. So he got to know me better. And so he
Mhm.
could see that many of the struggles that he has are just human struggles. Back to that, is it autistic? Is it ADHD? I stopped that argument. I just didn't
Yeah.
care anymore. I just
Yeah.
said, it doesn't matter. Let's just work on it. Right. And
Right.
then I gave him a framework, and that's what I teach in my course. 10 different categories. And so we would do his energy domains on Monday, and then we would do his work domains on Wednesday, and we would do his love domain Friday. So we could kind of separate it out. So trying to design his life, what he wanted out of his life wasn't so overwhelming because there's a lot of
Mhm.
parts to a good life.
Yeah. There there are a lot of categories. My son, unfortunately, lives about 125 miles away, so I don't
Yes.
see him that often. Plus, he's
No.
going away for the entire summer, so yeah, I
Mm.
don't know what's gonna happen then.
So what I tell my parents is that it's really helpful if you go into the course first and then you learn all the tools and techniques yourself over a period of 12 weeks. And then after that, there will be windows of opportunity and you will know what to do with those windows better than you did before.
Mhm.
That's why I encourage them to come into my course, and then I coach you weekly in the course too. So when any questions you have, any concerns you have, any roadblocks you've met, we talk for a half an hour as often as you want. So you just have to set it up. And there's some limitations with my calendar, but there's a lot of openings there that I'm available. So because what we want to do is we want them to move into this creation mode, right? Where they predict things are going to be better, not worse, right? I mean, we can always make life worse. That's easy, right?
Right.
We have a
Yeah.
lot of ways to imagine that it's going to get worse, and we can even imagine ourselves making it worse for ourselves. But if
Mhm.
we can predict that it will be better, that gives them hope and it gives them energy that they don't have usually.
Well, I think this is what his college studies are leading him toward. He has a very strong picture of what he's gonna be doing in the next 4 years and,
Um,
the kind of area he wants to work in, and, it's his goals. He's good with goals, and he's
Mhm.
good at pursuing them. It's just the stress that is the major thing that's
Yes.
undoing his
He
health.
needs to strengthen. It's literally, um, we need to strengthen our mental health in order to go from neutral to thriving. It's the
Yeah.
repetitions on using some of these tools and techniques, because I can tell you I'm better at it than I was 5 years ago. I know I am, because I've done the repetitions, and that's the only way I've gotten better. And I've gotten enough, I've run into enough roadblocks now myself, and where I can be a better coach for him,
Mhm.
you know? So, I mean, what we want to do is we want to imagine his steer map. His steer map is, my life, right? And his
Mhm.
thought is, it's going to get worse, right?
Yeah.
And so his emotion is anxiety, anxious, whatever, stressed, whatever we want to say. And then he imagines catastrophes
Yes.
in the future, right?
Yep.
And,
Always afraid that his grades are gonna, he's gonna fail a course, and in reality, he carries a 3.83 cumulative average, but he's always afraid he's gonna fail something.
ah,
So,
he just sounds like he's such a hard worker, and he's just determined. And we just need to give him one more tool in his tool chest. I mean, we can give him
yeah.
more than one, but this one would be really helpful to him. And then his result, okay, when he's imagining all that stuff, is that actually, sometimes it does get worse, right?
Yeah.
And then he has that as evidence that it's always going to get worse. And then he's
Right.
always predicting it will get worse. And it's like, but and I hear this from my son, but if I plan, it may not get so much worse, right? So that
Yeah, yeah.
spend a lot of the time planning future scenarios that they don't have enough information yet to really solve for. But
Well,
they,
any negative result is reinforcement of his
yes,
catastrophizing. So
absolutely.
it
And so
takes one.
it doesn't take us that long to do that either. My life, my thought is, I won't let that happen again,
Yeah.
right? And so then we become, I don't know, is vigilant an emotion? Vigilant, did I spell it right?
Yeah.
Vigilant?
Yeah.
So we're very vigilant, right? And so our actions is we notice everything that could go wrong.
Hmm.
I mean, how different are we, right? We notice everything, and it only gives me so many letters. So the result is then, you know, we're anxious,
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
right?
I notice I'm very sensitive to his moods. I pick them
Oh,
up right away.
oh,
Yeah.
I was also listening this weekend. If you go into the Art of Adulting Facebook page, I had the delightful experience of listening to Krista Tippett from the On Being podcast. It's picked up quite often by NPR, and it was
Hmm.
by Sylvia Boorstein. She's a psychologist. Here it is, and I don't think you probably can't see it because I can't share my screen, but it was so good where she said, "I'm 2 words away from anxiety." And Chris said, "What are the 2 words?" And she said, "Hi, mom."
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I know that feeling well.
Oh God, now what? Right? I just she's just if you listen to Sylvia, it's like, oh, she's so right on. She's a Jewish Buddhist who has been studying the where they overlap for a number of years, and a psychologist. Well, I just found her to be so helpful to my soul this weekend. Mother's Day and
It's
all.
funny because to me, "Hi, mom" would be a calming thing because he's communicating. So,
But she said, but if it's in that tone of voice, like "Hi, mom," like
yeah, yeah,
tell you
I
this,
know. Some
something
people
bad
are
has
like that.
happened. Yeah,
Yeah, something happened, right.
right.
Yeah.
So what do we do about this? This is the next question. So what do we do? Practice makes progress. We've all heard that. To me, the first thing we have to do is we have to be willing to feel our feelings. Because if we don't, they intensify.
Yeah.
So this happened to me last night. I was asleep. I woke up and I could not get myself back to sleep. And this does happen. I get so excited about what I'm going to do during the week. I was excited about talking to you, and I was like, I couldn't unjack my brain. It was like, oh, it was what, right? And I had read a book right before I went to sleep with a scene describing these people who had gotten imprisoned, and there was no way out. And so I finally went to sleep, and didn't I dream about that? I dreamed, but my scenario was totally different, but it was this fearful dream.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens, is that if we don't feel it, our brain will process it later.
Right.
And it
Oh, I
actually,
can tell you, I feel my feelings all the time. They're on my sleeve. Yeah.
yes. So if we take the time to name them, and it can just be uncomfortable and comfortable, because many of our autistic young adults are uncomfortable defining their feelings. They just
Yes.
don't like to put a label on them. If we
Right.
can find it in our body, if we can relax into it, and that's tricky. So the way I relax into it is by pretending I'm describing it, what's happening in my body. And that gives me just a little bit of wiggle room. I picture it in there. Like fear is like this hyper ball of fire just like running around in my chest, and it goes up my neck as well. And then you can actually remind yourself that it's caused by my evaluation of the situation. It's caused by the thought that I had. And then if we just feel it till it's gone, it usually only takes 60 to 90 seconds.
Oh boy, that's tough. Because I feel like I'm consumed by fear because my only child is, facing a serious health issue, and we lost his brother a couple years ago from COVID. So he was diabetic. So I'm dealing with a significant amount of fear and emotion about that.
Yes. And when we take the time to notice thoughts that are creating that fear, then we get some leverage on them. Because if we go back to this thing up here, where we can evaluate it as things are going to get worse or things are going to get better, then we start to look at our thoughts as to, okay, so these are not the only thoughts I could have. There are more options of ways to think about this that are still true to me. That's the trick. You can't just go, oh, I'm going to be, rainbows and daisies and happy and all that stuff. That never works. It never
No,
works.
no. And I'll tell you one thing that helps me. I play 7 musical instruments, and if it weren't for music, I think I would probably, be in a padded room somewhere.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that keeps my sanity.
Well, music is therapy. My daughter had a
Yep.
marvelous viola instructor, and she would go in there as grouchy as she could be. She would always come out with an elevated mood.
Right. It really, really helps. I don't know what it does neurologically, but it really helps.
Somehow it gets in there. It finds a way in. It better than words, better than all that. And so, yes, when you find that as an activity that works for you, yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, and it's a profession as well, so I can focus on something other than what I'm thinking, which I don't want to be thinking about.
Right. And that, just be careful with that, because what we want to do is we want to take the time to actually record the thinking that we're having. So I call this a thought download, and it doesn't require anything. I mean, then other than you could do it on a piece of paper and a pencil. You could do it on your phone, which is what I tend to do because I'm done with trying to keep track of paper. Um, you can do it with otter.ai, which is an app on your phone. It's free for the first 600 minutes each month, which is a lot. and it will
Yeah.
transcribe
Totally.
your thoughts, which for some of our kids, my son has dysgraphia, that I recommend that highly, because they
Hmm.
just can't, the hand just can't keep up with the brain. It's just going so fast.
Yeah, that would be good for him.
Don't you think? I think if we can convince our kids to just do a brain dump, on the regular, and then if
Mhm.
they're willing to start to map out what, using that steer map, what that interpretation, what that evaluation creates in terms of emotions and actions and results, if they would be willing to, when my son is willing to do that, he can make progress. When he doesn't understand that he's the person creating all of this and distance from it, that he distances from it, and that's when he becomes more childlike.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could tell you that my son would be receptive to something like this, but he he does not like therapists. He does not like anything connected with therapy or, psychology or anything. He's just extremely resistant to it, and I think it's because when he was younger, he went to so many of them who did not help him at all.
Not helpful. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so they get turned off. And yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's hard. And that I agree with you. And that's why, I mean, I was practicing this myself for years before I introduced it to my kids. And I got tremendous resistance from them for about a year and a half to 2 years. And then something magical happened, and it was my daughter. They're 25 and 29, and they're both still home. My daughter went to the local community college and took a positive psychology class. And
Hmm.
she came home and went, Mom, he's teaching the same stuff you've been telling me about.
Well, that would be a good idea. Maybe if it's academically connected, my son would pay attention to it.
Yes. And thank goodness for the University of Pennsylvania. And I've lost his name, which I should never lose. Anyway, the guy up there, um, who started the whole positive psychology movement. And there's just so much more research that's come out in the last 25 to 30 years that is so helpful. And it's scientific enough to appeal to our kids.
Yeah.
It, it's got the data, like Sonia Lyubomirsky's Happier book, where she
Hmm.
describes the people that are happier are the ones that are willing to be happy now and not make it
Right.
conditional, right? I'll be happy when, right? There's just so much good stuff out there. So I know that once now that I've gotten familiar with it, it's like, that show, The Good Doctor.
I've seen it once, I think. Yeah.
Me too, just once, because I just, anyway, in the very first episode, the doctor, the doctor mentor was talking to the resident who was interested in the good doctor. Like she wanted to,
Mhm.
have a thing going on. And she came to him and asked him, how do I get to know him better? And the doctor said, I don't know. You're going to have to find your own way in.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I thought, that's our kids. That was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
very wide, someday maybe I just don't watch that much TV. So someday maybe I'll be able to actually see if there's other things I can pick out of that show. But if I know it and I can sketch it on the back of a napkin in a conversation at a fast food store or in a side by side, we're driving someplace together, then when the opportunity is there, then I can put it in there. They're in general very resistant, but there are occasions when there's some openings. And
Yeah.
that
And they're all different, just like everybody else.
absolutely, absolutely. And yes, if you do get a chance, and I'll link to this thing that I listened to this morning that with the positivity with that explains this guy explains that whole concept, this concept here much better than of course I did it in 5 minutes. He did it in an hour.
Mhm.
There might just be a way that he positions things. There might be, another way to put it. Like my daughter said, I hate it when you say it's just your thoughts, Mom. So now I don't say that. I say, what is it that I say now? It's all in how you look at
Mhm. Mhm.
it. Same thing,
Oh,
just
yeah. Well, that's good.
different words. And when we find the words that click, it's like this whole, I don't know, I'm not saying everything's hunky dory here because it isn't. This last week we had some serious conflict going on, and I'm going to move out and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But as we develop this shared language and this shared collaborative philosophy, it we recover faster.
Mhm.
We don't have those holes. The holes don't last as long.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. And they are growing and becoming adults, and they do
Absolutely.
mature.
Yes. It,
Yeah, if I could have described my son 10 years ago, it would have been a completely different description than today. He was really in trouble back then.
yeah.
And and also something that happened with him over the last 3 or 4 years is he used to be very obese and he did not exercise. He lost 140 pounds and
Wow.
became a gym rat, and he loves to exercise. But of course, he affected his health back then.
Uh,
But so I just hope he can improve his health
well,
somehow.
and that's what we want to do. We want to move him past, okay, he's not sick. I mean, he does have this condition
Yeah, he
and
doesn't have symptoms yet, but
no symptoms.
yeah, yes, it's high risk.
But when I took my son to the cardiologist for this exact thing, he said, this is my younger son who's adopted. So how did I happen to know about it because of my brother, but um,
Wow.
anyway, the doctor said was really emphasized the food, right? And the health
Yeah,
habits. And my son
yeah.
he's 5'1" and he weighs 130 pounds.
Oh, wow. Huh.
And he exercises religiously and eats salmon
Yeah.
all the time. And
Yeah,
he's he eats more vegetables than most of us in this family.
that's
And
good.
you know, and he still has it.
Oh, that's terrible. Oh my goodness. So
So
where did it must be genetic, I guess.
yeah, yeah, it has to be. I know it is with my
Mm.
brother, it's genetic. So, because
Well,
his my
with
grandfather,
my son, his LDL cholesterol was never really that high. And
no,
so and same here. And so it kind of came as a bolt out of the blue.
with this calcium number, right? That was,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. They
Yeah,
know,
it's at 290, which is in moderately high risk for a person in their 60s or 70s, you know?
yeah,
It's off the charts high for someone who's 31.
yeah. Our doctor, his doctor, the cardiologist said that there is a model that's from the University of Chicago where they can put in these factors and determine what the risk is for of a cardiac or vascular occurrence. And
Well,
by
that is,
lowering his cholesterol, he was able to go from 75 to 25. But now he has had a reaction to the statin. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah, I had
where
a
you
problem
are.
with the statin too. A lot of people have that. What kind of reaction did he have?
He had a muscular soreness in his
Oh,
chest.
no, yeah, that's not good. So
So we
what did he do?
started. Now what do we do? I don't know. We're in that figuring it out phase. So I'm with you.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't not obvious the next step. But I
yeah.
do believe
Statin caused me to have insomnia and swollen feet and ankles. Yeah, it's not good.
yes. Yeah. I take it and it didn't affect me at all.
Yeah, some people are like that.
It didn't affect my brother, didn't affect my mother. So my dad took it. It didn't bother any of us. But
Yeah,
my so you don't that's why they're outliers. That's and often
yeah,
but even my brother, I believe is autistic. I believe my father's autistic too. So I don't know that really predicted anything. So it was a
Yeah,
concern.
I know my son's first cousin who passed away a couple of years ago. She was on the spectrum, and yet she had a PhD from a an Ivy League institution, and she also was an attorney.
Mm,
So very high functioning, very verbal from a young age, but on the spectrum. And health-wise, she had liver failure.
wow. Yeah, my father passed from alcohol induced
Well, that
dementia.
was her issue too. Yeah.
Yep, yeah. And I'm really
He was
sorry.
47.
Yeah, but that's a chemical coping option that my father,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And it kills
Yeah,
you.
my mother was an alcoholic and she too was most likely on the spectrum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It kills you softly.
Yes, yeah. Although
Decisive.
my mother made it to 75, I don't know how, but she did. She smoked and drank.
My dad made it to 80. Same thing.
Wow.
Smoked and drank. But the last
Oh
5
my
years
goodness.
are pretty.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Ugh.
I guess with this tool, then, we can start to decide with intention how we want to think, and we can practice the thoughts that work for us. And that's why this solution, we make them more of a habit. We decondition the thoughts that don't work for us. That's the vision of where we want to take this.
Mm-hmm.
And so but here's what I like about it with our kids. I position it as you want to be able to coach yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't want to
Well,
have to
that,
go to a professional.
yeah, well, my son won't go to a professional,
Right,
so yeah,
right.
yeah.
So
But
let's
how do you get someone to decondition those terrible thoughts and move to something more constructive?
it's just practice. It really is practice. It's awareness and practice. It's when they start to notice. When my
Mm.
daughter was it was a couple years ago, she was going to a math class at school, and she was so excited because it was Halloween, and she dressed up, and she got to the class, and she was the only one in a costume,
Oh, no.
and it just devastated
Ah,
her, right?
oh,
Thank God she had a teacher who was so cool, and she knew just how to comfort her, and she stayed for most of the class, and then she let her go early, and she came home and she said, Mom, it really was my thoughts. I didn't know
mhm,
that was
mhm.
going to happen, right? I didn't know. But that window opened up. And I'm not saying she doesn't feel the stress now. I'm not saying that, something in the environment will trigger her and she'll go crazy with the thoughts, but she recovers faster.
Yeah, that's good.
And
Mm.
it's not, we're not perfect. We're not, in no way.
But
All
feeling singled out is something that is, well, a challenge for everybody, but especially for our kids.
Yes. And she was so
'Cause
excited about it, right? So it was
oh,
like going from up here to all the way down. And, it was,
oh, yeah.
yeah,
They wanna fit in. They wanna fit in. They
fun
don't
to,
wanna stick out.
and of course, she's really into theater and creativity and all that. And so I have most of my kids are not like yours who are very, gifted academically. So your kids are more twice exceptional. Your son is more twice exceptional. And I do want to encourage you. I don't. It's in June 10th. June 10th. I'm going to interview a woman who wrote the book. Let me find the name of it. It's going to take me just a second. About twice exceptional kids. They're autistic as well. I think.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'll find her. Her name is.
I was just gonna tell you that, I kind of fit in that category myself
Yeah.
because I also have Tourette syndrome and was very academically gifted as a
Yeah.
child. Um, so yes, I wanna hear about that.
Yeah. It's the book. See, I was introduced to her also at the Executive Functioning Online Summit. And the title of her presentation was "It's Okay to Stop and Ask for Directions."
That's good.
And then she wrote a book, and I don't remember the name of it yet. I know I've bought it. At least I've downloaded the preview. I know I'm gonna want to buy it anyway. I just, oh God, there's so many books, right? So little time.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. It's
Yeah,
okay to stop and ask for directions. That's a wonderful title.
wonderful titles. So that's what we're gonna
Yeah.
go on. I'm gonna interview her with that. But let me just
hmm
find the name of her book. Emily, there it is. Raising Twice Exceptional Children is her book.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
what's hard, and I know we only have so much time, so I recognize we got 5 minutes left, that trying to find resources for young adults is different from finding resources for you know, for children. I mean, there's so many more children examples out there than young adult and
Yes.
adult.
Right.
So I will do my best to steer our discussion toward, okay, you know, we don't have school. They're off in a job where we cannot interfere. Sometimes they don't live with us anymore. You know,
hmm
what are your suggestions for people like us who fit that profile? And
I
usually
would love that.
they're so wonderful at answering it from that perspective because, you know, they're often they have their own experience because most of the people who write about this are that kind of a person anyway. And then they have younger children and they also have a practice usually. And I love learning what their best practices are because I'm going to grab those and I'm going to use those for, you know, in my home. So much, there's so much to know.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. So I will put a link in the show notes in the blog post that I do about our discussion, referring to that book as well, so you can find it easily. But know that she's coming on June 10th.
Okay, good.
So
I'll write that down.
so excited to see. So just stay on my email list and you'll get plenty of notice about that. So,
Okay, well, I really appreciate that. Excuse me, and it's wonderful to talk to you about our kids and their challenges.
and ourselves as well, and our challenges. That was the other. That's the thing that got me started was really just noticing that there really wasn't a whole lot out there for us. You know, this isn't, I call this, I mean, our kids are our best teachers, and I think we're getting a first class education. I
We
mean,
are.
sort of an Ivy League education, you know?
Gosh, well, back in the 90s when my son was little, nobody knew anything. And well, yeah, he was teaching me everything. So
Absolutely. And there wasn't a whole lot to refer to, or it was really
no,
focusing on the kids that were not the 2E kids, you know, the
yeah.
ones that had the intelligence but didn't, and also had an autistic brain, you know? They just had
Yeah, and the schools, of course, never knew how to educate a child like that.
no.
Yeah.
We actually moved my son to a different school where it was focused on that, and it just happened to be only 10 minutes away. We were so lucky. And the
Yeah,
first day he came home and he said, Mom, they teach me the way I learn at this school.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
good. Yeah, we had to get a private school for kids on the spectrum for our son. We had to sue the district. It's a long story. I
yep,
won't bore you
and
with it, but
very similar, similar experience.
yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
math teacher that had him call me and say, the only reason why I don't get math is because I'm lazy.
Oh, ah,
I know. But interesting that Devin also wrote a book called The Myth Laziness Does Not Exist.
exactly. Yeah.
That, that's another one of his books. I haven't even looked at that one. I'd love to at least, you know, look at the free download on that because and I love this
Sounds good.
teacher
Mm, mm.
anonymously. But anyway, she's out of our lives, thank goodness.
Yes, good. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. But yeah, so you know, it, we manage. I mean, I think what I'm trying to help our parents do is, you know, be okay with making progress. Find peace in making progress in pieces.
hmm
Like we don't have to get the whole thing. We just,
Well, yeah, sometimes the best success comes incrementally, so you know, don't always have the whole thing at once.
no,
Yeah.
no.
No success dumps here.
And our kids are going to suffer. And so are we.
Yeah, I know.
And that's, I love this way that this guy framed it. It was like, we're always evaluating whether it's good or bad. And,
Hmm.
if we can get to the evaluation piece where recognize here that, if we predict we can get better, then we have hope. So that's what these tools, I'm trying to offer these tools to moms like us that need them.
Yeah, we all do, definitely.
Even when
Oh, well, thank you. That's a lot of food for thought.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you were brave enough to come join me. I love that. And I will send you the link to this particular blog post that's going to have a transcript, and it's going to call out all the resources that I mentioned here. So, and I hope
Thank you.
you watch the webinar that I put together that gives you a framework that I think really helps figure out, okay, now I know where to hang everything. So now I know that I can make progress in each of those parts and come up with the piece that I'm looking for in my heart.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
It's been a very informative hour. Yes.
Oh, great. All right, great. All right. Well, then I'll
Okay.
see you again soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
For now.
Okay, that's it, I guess.